Hi, I'm doing videos again because I stopped smoking weed on Tuesday and it's Saturday. I haven't smoked reefer since how many days? Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday. I ain't huffed nuggets for 4 days. And so I'm all going buck wild with the videos. This video is titled I'm Super Duper Disturbed. That there's all these, that all of the, a lot of, it seems like most of the new, or I guess, alien, ancient civilization, alien, alternative history people are right-wingers, dude. It's so bizarre. I wanted to do a whole video about it because, like, what year is it? 2025? Like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago or whatever, I was like, I always looked at, like, nobody was talking about, aliens and what was the previous civilization and that made the pyramids and, interdimensional beings and all this kind of stuff. Like, I thought that was like New Ager stuff, like hippies. I thought that was the hippies. And I thought hippies and New Agers were all left-wingers. I thought they were the Democratic Party, and all of the Republicans were like the super closed-minded, stuffy, rich, traditional, Christian, lily white types, right? But like, you're getting up and, the Art Bell people from Art Bell days are like they have good things to say about Donald Trump and the Republicans, and only bad things to say about the Democrats. So like David Wilcock, I saw him with an interview the other day with Danica Patrick. So I bet you David Wilcock and Danica Patrick voted for fucking Trump. And then I saw another video. She interviewed some lady who's like, why I left the Democratic Party. Like, they were like rebelling against the Democratic Party. And I heard my own brother voted for Donald Trump. And I think I know why. It's because it was like, it's not because he thinks Donald Trump is the best, but because he doesn't like Kamala Harris, And it's like, you can have all the problems that you want with the Democratic Party, but that doesn't mean that the solution is to vote the Republican Party in, And maybe some people are like, oh, maybe if we bring the world to a screeching halt and destroy it, we could rebuild it quicker. No. No, you don't tear something down to rebuild it. You try to not tear it down and you try to rebuild it. If that's how some people think. But I just wanted to address all of the different like issues of what people had and why they think it's the Democratic Party that are the bad people. Like David Icke. I saw David Icke getting interviewed by Danica Patrick the other day. And I skipped around. I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't watch these interviews, but I watched enough to hear him say that I watched the whole David Icke or David Wilcock video. That was interesting. But no, he long enough for him to say that yeah, like it's the Republicans the Democrats who are at fault, and the whole COVID like quarantining was all like deep state, and so but the quarantining people were the Democrats, and so they're the deep state, and so then the answer is the Republicans. And it's let me address the issue. So one of them is the whole like COVID thing. So in COVID, they did lockdown because of the pandemic, and that they were having like laws for the lockdown. And so then people were like, oh no, you're taking our freedoms away from us. This is deep state making us lock down, and then also making laws that you have to get like vaccinated for the COVID. But that was like, and then they're saying, and it's because like they're going to put like nanotechnology in it so that they can shock you, or because they're putting like some kind of sickness in it that they can make you sick with it. You shouldn't trust them, or it's just them taking your power away by making you take it. But they've like lost the thread that that's what That's what we do. We make laws to protect ourselves, and it's our elected officials that we choose to make the laws to then have us protect ourselves. So it's like when the people are creating these like fantasy stories, it 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 causes people to not trust the government, and but not trust the wrong part of the government. You don't want to trust that, like, these rich people controlling, but those are the Republicans. So it's just it's yeah. So I'm just trying to like figure out, how it got that way. And I think the reason that it got that way is you can lose the thread, you can lose your common sense, your groundedness with reality, and spin off into some like mass psychosis if you don't know history. History is your ground. History is the thread that leads you all the way back to the whole meaning of it all and the whole reason for the beginnings of everything. We have always made laws that everybody have to follow in times of crisis. Like, we drafted people into World War II. People weren't bitching and moaning about that. We increased the taxes of the wealthy up to 90% of every dollar of 400,000 to win World War II. Everybody had to fall in line with that. People had to go, to the factories to build the weapons. I mean, we all agreed on it. So it's like that. That's what COVID was. It was just trying to contain a pandemic so that the least number of people died. 1 million Americans died, and a lot of those people didn't have to die. So then they make up these. So then they take it from there, and they make up these stories about how you shouldn't have control over people with the vaccines, and then so in general vaccines are bad, and so now all these kids, like the first kids in 30 years, are dying of measles in Texas because they're following along like they shouldn't. Like, vaccines are bad. They're the way that the government like kills us, and so you're going to kill your own kids. And then there's like 500 kids with the measles now. There's a big outbreak in Western Texas because of that. Until Robert F. Kennedy finally had to be like, okay, fine, yeah, the vaccine's good. And even Donald Trump said he believes in the vaccine. He took it, and his kids took it. So they're like, so I think it's some kind of it could be some kind of like game that the tool that they're using to actually do exactly what they're saying that the other side is doing. So they're trying to consolidate power by as there's consolidating power by decreasing the taxes on the wealthy. Nobody's paying attention to that because they're telling everybody that they're looking out for you by making it so that they can't make laws to make you get vaccinated. So let me give you some examples. So, like, I was watching this video, just a bit of it. I skipped to the part because they have different chapters that talking about different things, and I should do that with my videos. But I don't watch my videos because they're so long. But I should watch them and like tag them and stuff. But and keywords and all that, and divide up the sections just so I can get more views. But Danica Patrick is interviewing a girl, Elizabeth April, who's a remote viewer, and so she's remote viewing like like talking to aliens, like of the history of the universe or the solar system and the Earth, with the reptilians getting kicked out, and then she turns around and goes, but yeah, I read Elon Musk's autobiography because I think he's like Leonardo da Vinci. He's like, or Einstein. He's one of the once a generation super genius. And we need him because look at all of the things that he invented, And so, and so now she's, and then, but at least she said, I don't know if he's good or bad though. So it's like, well, aren't you contradicting yourself? So if we need him so bad because he's so much smarter than everybody, because nobody else is smart enough to like invent the things that he invented, but he might be bad. Like, so then the bad service to self people are the ones we need because they're smarter. It's like you're twisting, you're contradicting yourself. I thought smart meant good, and like bad was evil, and so then you can, if you start contradicting yourself like that, you can say whatever. And also all this remote viewing stuff, she wasn't saying anything that people hadn't been saying already. So it led me to think like maybe it's some giant freaking scam conspiracy of these rich people are like, you know what? People are eventually going to learn about like ancient civilizations and maybe even interested in the aliens and all that stuff. So let's just nip it in the bud now and get control of the narrative now by like paying people off, artificially boosting people, like that girl, and then like you tell them a bunch of stuff, or you hypnotize them into thinking that they're like a remote viewer, and you tell them a bunch of stuff that you already knew from somewhere else because somebody told you, and then you sprinkle in, or maybe because you already know that they have like totalitarian or like right-wing tendencies anyway, or then you just tell them. Because you're paying them, you're like, well, I paid you, so aren't you going to be loyal to me? So then they're just going to be on the right wing. And they're going to be saying stuff like Elon Musk is the smartest ever, and because he is, then, don't trust the Democrats because of the whole COVID hoax, and so, in the end of the day, vote Republican, yay! So, To believe in like democracy and the values that the Democratic Party has is way more in line with history, the knowledge of history, and open-mindedness, and everything human, like fairness, than the right wing. So I think it's just a lack of it's a disconnection. It's a lack of knowledge about history. I think the cure is to become more focused on mainstream history, and that's what I'm going to focus on. I mean, I think everybody's already starting to realize that there was an ancient civilization that was using like levitation technology and sound wave technology to levitate the rocks and to turn the rocks into putty, so that they could cut the rocks like they're cutting through butter, and scoop the rock out like with big shovels instead of cut it and then levitate it into place. People are going to figure that out. But anyway, so what we really should try to focus on is just mainstream history, and reward people for knowing mainstream history. Encourage people to learn mainstream history, create ways for regular people to be interested, and because then it would make you immune to falling prey and to all of these like conspiracy theories, because you would use it on the backdrop of history. You'd be like, well, how is this consistent with history? Like, doesn't this remind you more of the bad people in history than the good people in history? Like all the things that Donald Trump is doing is consistent with all the worst people in history, like Nero, Caligula, and I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it's obvious. And so that means Donald Trump is just another Nero. And then you look at their backgrounds, and you look at the worlds they live in and their personalities, and you say, oh, well, right, of course, it's from all of the, the wealth discrepancy, spoiled brat, and the just the power play and disconnection from reality. It's the same thing. And so if you look at, the Democratic Party, you can see how they are more democratic. They're not as beholden to the rich people. They have more actual real people involved in them, like Bernie Sanders, who don't take, rich people money, lobbyist money. They don't, or Ocasio-Cortez, and I guess some other ones don't. And and then they don't fall brainwashed by that whole, well, what's wrong with wealth discrepancy? What's wrong with just wanting to get ahead and not taxing the wealthy? Well, I mean, all the historical examples. All you have to do is point to history. You could say, oh, well, I mean, what about the French Revolution? What about the fall of Rome when the Goths came down and all of the freaking Roman citizen farmers turned against Rome? They marched on Rome with the Goths. Their army it was like Spartacus. Their army was growing as they were going south with Romans. Spartacus, how he got an army of 70,000 because the people weren't, It was all from wealth discrepancy. That's what causes it, and power discrepancy. Why was Rome growing when they were the Roman Republic, when it was more democratic? And why did all the writers disappear when it was all totalitarian? Why does it was because they were afraid of there was too much control. They were afraid of writing. All the writers in the past got killed, got axed. One of them, Ovid, got exiled by Nero. I think Seneca was forced to commit suicide by Nero or something, even though he was his childhood tutor. Cicero was murdered by Mark Antony and had his hands nailed to the wall to scare anybody else from writing. And so all of the Roman writers you know of, they weren't from the Roman Empire. They're from the Roman Republic. And then a couple from the very beginning of the Roman Empire, like Seneca was from Nero, like at the very beginning of the Roman Empire. And then there's nothing. It was just it was like modern day Russia, where there's no intellectualism coming out of there, or North Korea or something. So, I mean, wouldn't you have liked to have writers and a continuation of intellectuality in the Roman Empire? That got replaced by, like, the Christians and Christianity, but that was a religion of sharing. Like, the Christians were the first ones to invent the hospitals. The first public hospital was created by Christians in Turkey. The first group housing was done by Christians in Rome, where they converted all of the oversized Roman senators' mansions into communal housing. Like St. Augustine, that he lived in his family's mansion, but it was now a big Christian commune. And so that's how you fix things, and that's how you, that's how it, like if there's an economic crash, that's what we will be. We'll become way more democratic and more sharing and less wealth discrepancy, because we'll have to, just like Rome did in the fall. And if you get totalitarian, it'll crash, just like Rome Empire crashed, And that's why the thing that grew and made it better was when you were more democratic, just like the Roman Republic was what grew Rome. And they were more democratic than the Roman Empire, which was what killed Rome. America was more democratic and shared the wealth more in the 60s when America was growing. And now America falling when there's more wealth discrepancy and less democratic. So it's like these alien people, like talking about like David Wilcock talking about, or like David Icke talking about like little spiritual tricks that people somehow can do, and like you die and then your body shrinks down to the size of a Kachina doll, like in Tibet, or he knew about the ancient history, so then some guy, they come to him and they disclose to him, and so he knows all this stuff. And at the end of the day, David Icke, David Wilcock, Danica Patrick, the guy who 30 years ago was the moon, Alex Collier, all of these fucking people are right-wingers who voted for Donald Trump. So it does you absolutely nothing. It does absolutely no good whatsoever. So maybe that's why, like people weren't so interested in aliens and stuff. It doesn't matter. Because if you get interested in that, it doesn't teach you a goddamn thing. At the end of the day, you're like, oh, Lord and Savior Trump, he is the only one true Lord who comes and he can see through all of the shenanigans of the communist left with our Lord and Savior, King of Kings, Elon, who is then going to go into the Doge. He invents his own Doge. You know what's ironic about that is like Joe Rogan was doing an interview, was interviewing some fat-faced, bald billionaire guy, one of the original PayPal dudes who couldn't barely talk, who stutters, going, don't you know that there's like 350 government agencies? What a waste of money. And Joe Rogan's like, wow, what a waste. So then Donald Trump gets in, boom, starts two new government agencies, starts Space Force, starts Doge, and now he has this new Doge guy who's now directing the whole cabinet. And now he wants his, first he wanted his daughter to run president, and now his son, he thinks his son Junior is going to be president. And now Don Jr. is now up on TV all the time as like a political commentator, and you know, it's nepotism up the wazoo. You know, like his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, is now the, like, what, some big cabinet position, and then gets the big investment, $3 million investment money from Saudi Arabia by using his connections with the president. I mean, if you had any political common sense, you would know that nepotism, totalitarianism, redesigning the whole political structure from scratch because you think you're better than everybody and you're the only one who can do it, like, that reeks of all the worst people of history. And if you were even the slightest bit of historian, you would recognize that. So the most important thing, I think, now is to learn history, and you know, like, we need to make a way to, like, pass, like, you know, I, like, made history tests, you know, with levels of history knowledge. And if you're going to start yapping, if you want to get a political position, you need to prove you know have a certain level of history, because then you're just going to come in here and start yapping about, like, conspiracy theories, you know, because you got warmed up with the conspiracy theories about the aliens, and if you can talk about aliens this, aliens that, parallel universes, wacky stuff that has nothing to do with our daily lives, then you can just go, oh yeah, aliens are conspiracy theories, because inside, like, don't trust any of those communists, and oh, you're a socialist because you said that we should tax the wealthy, and so now we have to, you're labeled as a, so, because they're not tethered to reality, because history is reality. History is what actually happened and where we come from, and shows the patterns of things, but they don't know any of that because they didn't study history. So it's just disturbing. I mean, you could keep on, and those are just the ones that I named, but I mean, I'm looking at, like, Jimmy Corsetti. He's out there, and I'm like, the more of these names I drop, the more I'm like, holy shit, these motherfuckers are straight up plants. I think Jimmy Corsetti's a plant because he was a soldier in Iraq, right? So he already worked for the government and the military. The intelligence probably came up to him and was like, hey, you like the ancient stuff? Here, let's boost you. We'll pay $80,000 a year, and we'll boost you up and you know, promote you and even help edit your videos and all that stuff. But what you got to do is you got to tell everybody that Atlantis is the Richat structure. And now he's all convinced that the Richat structure, trying to misdirect people so that they don't know that it's in the Bahamas, exactly where I say I found the Temple of Poseidon 100%. And you know why people would think that it's in the Richat structure? Because nobody reads. If you were to read history, you'd know it's not the Richat structure. You know, and then you read it and you go, and then you can see how people have the tendency to then misinterpret history the same way that they misinterpret modern day, you know, facts to create whatever reality they want. You know, so if you can actually demonstrate, and we have the practice and habit of interpreting history the correct way, without inventing stuff and saying, oh, he really meant this, even though that's clearly not what he was saying, then you wouldn't have such a habit of creating your own fantasy world in the present day. You could look at data and research and interpret it, and not hoodwink people into being, oh, but they really said that, and that's what he meant with that. Like they're like, Plato, yeah, sure, we admit Plato was talking about Atlantis, but he wasn't serious. It was just a euphemism, an allegory. I've heard people say that a bunch of times, and it's like, but Plato specifically said at the beginning, he goes, oh yeah, by the way, just to make it clear, this is real history. Okay, so here's the story. So then if Plato's saying, hey, by the way, before I begin, I just wanted to make it clear, this is real history, and then he talks, then you go, oh yeah, no, it wasn't real history. So it's like you could just say, oh, he didn't mean that to whatever. You know, you could just X out. Oh no, he didn't mean that. No, that's not what he meant. No, no, not that. Oh, that. Circle that one. Yeah, and then twist it to make this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that. And then you go to and you're like, yeah, it's in the Richat structure. It's like, what? But what about all the data? You know, the island is 550 kilometers by 350 kilometers. The city is 25 kilometers across. There's an actual city circle, 25 kilometers across. It's 13 kilometers from the sea. It's actually 13 kilometers from the sea. There's a southern plain. Look, a southern plain. It's directly out from the Pillars of Hercules. Look, directly out from the Pillars of Hercules. It's directly out. You'll bump into it. Look, Columbus bumped into it. There's mountains to the north. Look, Andros, the mountains to the north, surrounded by a huge continent that stretches the entire globe. Oh, look, North and South America stretches the entire globe. Surrounded by a whole bunch of islands. Oh, look, surrounded by a whole bunch of islands. Puerto Rico, Cuba, Bahamas, Turks, Caicos, all that. Antilles. How about, got hit by a comet. Oh, look, evidence of a comet coming down in South Carolina with all of those lakes and nanodiamonds. I mean, you could go, you just, all of those reasons, and that's not enough. And then you're like, nah, Richat structure. Why? Because, look at the circles. It's like, what? Anyway, we're about to run out of juice. So, I'm like fed up with it. I think that it's actually, at this point, it's just more important to study real history, because we need to fix the economy. We don't need to start yapping on about oh, the aliens did it and passed society. Oh, and by the way, vote Republican. Like, what the fuck? Vote Democrat. And read, dude. You can read and you can interpret books on your own. You don't need other people to interpret for you. So I wish hippies, actual real left-wing vegetarian hippies, would get up there and start talking about aliens more, and do it on their own, even if you're not a superstar like all these rich ass Joe Rogan right-wing people who also talk about the aliens. Let's take the aliens back, left-wingers.